I'm going to talk a bit about how we translate location to place. Location, this is where we are in the big picture of things. But it's pretty hard to have that be a personal experience for you. So we're also here. We're at the corner of West Randolph and North LaSalle. And that's an intersection, and that's another location. But that's not a place. A place comes from the environment, it comes from the local culture, and it comes from the people. And all of those things together make the places where we live, we work, we play. And it's in different places, different ways. And place is important. It's where we connect with nature and enjoy a sunny day. It's also where we flirt, where we make love. It's where we play in the water and in the sunshine in cities. And it's where we're inspired to be creative, to put our mark on the world, on our urban environment. And it's where we connect. And all of those things make place a very, very important part of our lives. And so how do we get from this notion of just a location to a place that has meaning for us? Well, that would have been a silly question 50 years ago, more than that, 100 years ago, 200 years ago, 1,000 years ago, because at our core, humans know how to make places that work for us. We know how to create places that work for our governance, we know how to make social places, and we know how to make recreational places. But our connection with place and our confidence that we can make places that are good for us individually and as a society has really been fractured. And that's been fractured by urban renewal, by federal highway programs that have put the car in place over the human, and by a whole series of things that happened in this country in the 20th century. And what we were left with, for people who knew what kind of places we need to thrive and to live, what we're left with are desolate places, empty plazas, places that really work wonderfully for the automobile, but not for humans. And places, surprisingly, that have been designed by experts and professionals that don't work in the way that they're intended to work, despite all good intentions. And it's rather remarkable. I like to quote William White on this, who's one of the first people in the 20th century who really began to think about this in a measured way. As difficult as it is to design a space that isn't good for humans, it is truly remarkable how often this has been accomplished in our cities and our towns. And out of that has grown a movement. This reaction against these places that aren't good for humans is a movement called placemaking. And I'm going to talk about placemaking today. And placemaking is really about recognizing and celebrating the local culture, the people, the environment, the ideas of a local place. And it's a ground-up movement. It's the process of people coming together in a physical environment in order to shape their world, to facilitate social interaction, and to improve their quality of life. And that placemaking happens in places where people play, in parks. It happens in markets where we buy food, where we eat, where we come together and enjoy activities. It happens in very public places in our neighborhoods, where we strive to make better places for our children, for families, for residents. And it even happens in private places, office buildings, residential areas, where investors and developers know that good places for people to come together to share ideas and community are good for everybody and good for the bottom line. So I'd like to share 3 stories with you to illustrate what placemaking looks like today. How have we taken this reaction to urban renewal and the automobile and focus on suburbia, and how are communities using that today in order to take back place, and what I call, how are we relearning place governance? How are we learning how to flex our civic muscles again? So story number one, I call from asking to doing. And this is a story that takes place in Santurce, Puerto Rico. And Santurce is the largest district of the city of San Juan. It's just east of Old San Juan. And it has 90,000 people. So if some of you think about placemaking as, it's about a park. It's about deciding what plants are in a park and what you want to do and where the playground equipment goes. This is placemaking at a completely different scale. And in Santurce, 90,000 people over 6 square miles. And perhaps even more importantly, there are over 40 neighborhoods. This is a bigger place than many cities and towns. And in these 40 neighborhoods, there's great disparity between income, economic opportunity, and living conditions. With the northern part, if any of you have ever been there, of Miramar and Condado, where the resorts are, having very high per capita income and really beautiful spaces. And the southern edge of the district with per capita income below $5,000 a year for residents. And very limited economic opportunity in an island that has really suffered economic crisis these past few years, if anyone is keeping track of those things in the Wall Street Journal or online. And so what does placemaking look like in this district? Well, placemaking was introduced here by the Foundation for Puerto Rico last year because the foundation is committed to bringing Puerto Rico into the 21st century with a 21st century economy. And they believe that Santurce and the people of Santurce are the heart of the community and that they are from what the place will come. And so this district, which used to be the downtown for the entire island, there were over 40 movie theaters, there were cinema houses and art houses and department stores, saw great disinvestment after the Mall of the Americas was built outside in the suburbs, and everyone has left, and the economy is really suffering. And the foundation has said, let us start with the people. Let us look at these vacancies and the vacant lots where no development has occurred, and let's bring people together. And we, as the foundation, will be the convener. But we are not the authority, and we are not leading the process and telling people what to do. And they're building on what is there. There's a vibrant art and cultural scene, both the kind of formal arts, the Ballet of San Juan and the symphony and the music conservatory, and also the informal economy, the kind of local, what they call barrio culture, of the artists and the people making food and in local businesses, and really trying to murals within various parts of Santurce. And the foundation is saying, let us all come together and let us figure out how we can revitalize and take what we have as a culture and bring it back. And use spaces like La Placita, which is the traditional food market, and a place where people come to dine and drink in the evening, people of all generations. And let's come together and let's do this. And the foundation has convened meetings for the past year. And what is so extraordinary about this effort is that these meetings are occurring outside of government. We hear planning meetings. Probably many of you have been to planning charrettes, or you come together to try to decide things in your community. Those are often run by government. It's a government project. There's money available. Government isn't involved here. After years and years of government providing everything in the island, they no longer can. And so they feel best if they can develop this plan outside of government. So people are acting. They're not asking for something. They're acting. They're making it happen on their own. They're forming study groups, and they're doing working groups and deciding, how are we going to move forward without government? And hoping that government eventually will come along with them. And these people are gaining authority from action. It's a powerful story. It's at the beginning. It's a powerful story. Number 2 is about pushing back on the system. It's slightly different. This is a story that began with the question, why do so many of the places in our cities and towns look like this? Why were they designed for the automobile? Why isn't there activity? Why aren't they safe? Why don't they give us beauty and joy? And this story stems from that question. And what came out of this is a group called Better Block, and it's an organization that began by taking a block in their neighborhood in Texas, 2 planners, and over a weekend building what they wanted it to be. Well, they were tired of talking about, I want the coffee shop and I want the bookstore. They built it. They started small businesses. They put up a temporary installation. And at the end of that, they realized that they had broken about 50 zoning regulations. No surprise here. I hear chuckles. And they said, there's something wrong here. When government has put up obstacles for us to get the vibrant life we need in our communities. And so now they go around the country and they meet with residents over a weekend. They talk about what they want in communities, and then residents make a plan. People have business plans. They set up the coffee shop, the bookstore, they start the movie theater, and they come back and they build it over a weekend. And a requirement of this is that you really shouldn't buy materials. You have to borrow materials. You have to ask for them to be donated because that creates social interaction. That connects people in communities who haven't talked to each other in a long time or perhaps never. And they come together and they build. And so they're taking these spaces that regulation and zoning have contributed to in their communities, and they're transforming them over a weekend and saying, look what this place can be. And it's very powerful. And the interesting thing about it is that this happened as a rebellion against regulation and government. And guess what? Government's gotten savvy. And so now city officials are bringing them in to work because they realize that it's much more efficient to have people tell you directly what they want and to try it. And if it works, it works. And if it doesn't, well, you go on to something else. But there's not a lot of money and time invested in this. It's very nimble. It's very efficient. And so governments are now on board with this. It's change through collaboration and cooperation. Story number 3 is really a lesson that temporary can have lasting impact. And what that story is Fargo, North Dakota, and Moorhead, Minnesota, A Streets Alive. So this is modeled on the Bogota, Colombia Ciclovia event. 2 days each summer for the past couple of years, they close a loop between the 2 cities to vehicles. And it's open for pedestrians, bicyclists, rollerbladers, whatever kind of transportation you can figure out, but it can't be cars. And what's happened in these 2 very conservative cities is that residents have begun to think about living very differently. And it's become not only about healthy living, but they've begun to question, why can't we have this all the time? Maybe we should begin to think about how do we plan beyond the automobile? And they're beginning to see it. City officials are seeing this in what they're getting back in their comprehensive planning, where for the first time, residents who were so set on don't tell me I can't drive are now saying, hey, we want this all the time. Let's figure out how to get there. Let's figure out how to do this and to be a community that be connected in this way. So events are a kind of placemaking. They can instigate profound change. The lessons here are really about a change, a shift from this notion that placemaking is only about the physical environment to one where placemaking is really about a process. It's a process that's agile and decentralized. It's about impermanent and flexible and unorthodox and collaborative. And it's also messy, just like our cities and communities. Because we live, and the messiness is what makes our cities and communities so wonderful. It's what makes us be able to enjoy the serendipitous events that happen in our lives. And so what used to be this make a plan, everyone get on board, the city's in charge, we're going to reach consensus and have meetings and come up with one way of doing things. Placemaking has said, no, that's not what cities are about. That's not how we live our lives. We live our lives in a space. And placemaking creates the space where a lot of different, diverse things are happening. people in the community who even have different values, who want different things, interact and act within this space. It's about thought and interaction, collaboration, disagreement, trying things, demonstration, and other actors and influencers come in along the way as needed. It's a very different concept than the top-down approach. And it's turning City Hall on its head. And that can make public officials really uncomfortable, but savvy officials are actually understanding that if they can get their hands around what it would look like in City Hall to accommodate these processes, that it actually is a very efficient way for communities to be able to celebrate their culture and to affect change in the world. And that's a very, very powerful notion that placemaking has gone beyond. It's about people learning place governance and taking control in an era of really reduced resources. It's a way to get people moving toward change within communities. And at the end of the day, this new placemaking is really restoring the role that we've had in the public realm. The public realm is the connective tissue that binds our communities together. Because it's not only the connective tissue of this sidewalk will lead me to the local coffee store, or I can drive from this place to the other. The connective tissue is people. It's the culture of people that connects us, that helps us make our lives better. And this is the promise of placemaking in 2014, and I'm very excited about it. Thank you.